Hi everyone. So today I'm going to, I don't even know the actual topic. I have to first look at this thing and then I can give you the topic. It'll be in the video title most likely. So I was looking through the React docs. I think it's this one. Yeah. And I wanted to pull this. So I wanted to show you, like, I'm literally pulling it off the React docs. So I went to the thing. I was trying to explain hooks to somebody and I saw this and I was like, okay, well, there's some problems with this and I'll explain what the problems are and how you would fix them. So we've got a component here and I could use the whole screen. Let's see. Can I do this? Yeah, that works. And then hang on. What? There. So it's not a function, right? Nobody don't use this function syntax unless you're going to use unless you're going to use that. If you're going to use this, then use function. Otherwise, come on, let's use const. Let's make it good. Let's do this thing correctly. And then also, this example doesn't show it, strangely, but you need to export your component. Now, you could export from up here. You just write export right there. But I still prefer to do it this way because I usually have one component per file. I know that when you import it, you can name it whatever you want, but I don't do that. So I name it the same as the file. It's very easy to manage it that way. Okay, so other than that, let's see what else we got. We wouldn't have comments in our code. That's a big thing, right? Like, why would you have these comments here? Declare a new state variable which will call count. I mean, that's great for people looking at docs. Here, we don't want that. And let me just make sure that we're with spaces here, so it doesn't start putting tabs in. All right, so that's something, right? This makes sense now. You got a component. Let's also put a new line here so to differentiate between these two. And then the first thing I would call out is this. Why do we have a callback in the middle of our button here? So if you memoize this, which we're going to do, just make it 100% perfect. Actually, if this was a button, this would most likely, if it was in an application, be a button component. Right now it's not. So I think putting it like this is not a big deal. But we could memoize this so that it doesn't have to like re-render this button or add a new listener and remove an old listener in React and nothing like that. So we can memoize this and we can use hooks to do it, and we really should. So we can do use callback, okay, and we'll just add that there, and now we'll wrap this in a use callback. So the way to do that is we'd call it update count, right? Is that what this is doing? Yeah, and we just call use callback. Normally, I would never write this in one line if you watch any of my videos, but I'm going to. So right now, we have to put the... okay, I'm not going to one line it. I can't read this. So we'll do this. The thing is, I'm going to say second arg and stuff like that. It's easier to say second arg if it's literally down here and not like way over here on the side of the screen. Can you not see my mouse? Holy crud, you can't see my mouse. I'm in full screen. You can't see it. You can't see it here. What in the world is going on? It's like showing up and disappearing. Okay, I'm going to pause it and try to fix that. Check this out. So notice here, look at this. You can see my mouse just fine, but when I move it over the Sublime text window, you can't see it. I'm going to try closing it and reopening, I guess. Okay, yeah, I can't solve it. I don't know what's going on. I'll just highlight so you can see it. Maybe you can see the mouse, but it's not in the video, although I did check the video and I couldn't see it. So I don't know. So here's what we got. So we got a button that has on click. It's going to be called update count. So I'm not going to name this on click. Okay, this is not like it's coming in through a prop. It's a function that says on click update count. So on a click, like when a click event occurs, update the count. So you want to name that properly. And I'm writing it like this. And notice here. So this is correct. Okay, everything we did is fine. But there's a weird thing. This count here. So this count is the second arg to this update count. So anytime you click it, it's going to cause this button to render anyway, right? Anytime you click it, it'll re-render it because it has to create a new update count function. It might not re-render the button itself. React might be smart enough just to change the on-click handler, the event on this button. But I'm not actually sure, and that kind of sucks that I don't know, but I don't. And so like if the parent re-rendered, this thing would re-render 100%, and this update count would not re-render in that case because the count would not have changed. Therefore, it will not create a new one. So if the parent re-renders, it won't do that, which is great. But if the parent re-renders, this will still run through the whole function and get to the return statement. Since this takes no args, well, anyway, you usually want to memoize anyway, but since it takes no args, it's actually a good idea. Hang on, what am I doing? Yeah. It's actually a good idea just to memoize it. Why not? And then you export that memoized version, and this will import as memo. So what's going on here is that now if some component re-renders outside of this, and the props don't change, which they never will, then this thing won't get re-rendered. So this thing will stay static no matter where it's at, unless you change the state internally. And the only way to change the state internally is by clicking this button. You can also prevent some more re-renders here. Man, I still don't know the video title. What's this going to be? This is like, I don't know, React hooks behind the scenes? It's not really. So we can get rid of this count here. And the reason we can get rid of it is because we can do one of these guys. Set count actually can take a function, and in that function we have access to the value of the function as the first arg, and then we can use that to bump up count. Now there's a better way to do this. So the problem is because you're defining count here and then you're also defining count here, it's a conflict. Sometimes you'll have ESLint rules that'll complain about it. I do. On any projects I do at work, there are ESLint rules that would complain about this because I'm defining this in the scope of something that's already been defined. Now you're like, okay, well, yeah, but it's very clear that this count is coming from here. Not always, okay? Especially when you get more complex code, it's definitely not the case. So we can call this local count. And if you use this local in front of it, people will start understanding that, that's the one in this context, right? There's maybe, like, this is the local count. You could like I've tried unknown count and that looked really bad. I didn't like that. I'm never gonna do that again. It was like unknown count. It's like, but I know what it is. It's right here. But it's local count. Makes sense. There are probably other better names that we can use as prefixes or postfixes for this. This is the one that I use. You could also just call it value, right? Set count value plus 1. But I want people to know it's a count because I know it's the count. It's literally listed here. So I wanted to make it clear, like, this is the count. If you see this anywhere in the code, you'll say, there's a count being incremented. Oh, it's coming from, I see where it's coming from. Okay, cool, I get it. Right, and normally I would write this, I would also, like, dip this down. And let's see, how did you do this? Something like this. This is how I would write it. Doesn't mean you have to write it this way, but this is how I would write it, because if I'm looking at a PR or anything, I can skim down. I can see count, local count, okay, count plus 1, cool. So that's where it's coming from. Good, I can keep going and continuing. And I can also see this very easily. If this is like, oh yeah, you can't see my mouse. If this is way over here like this, I guarantee you I will miss it. I will not see that at all, especially if it has more than one value. Here you have count and like count 2 or something like this. I would know. I would never see it. I'm not gonna like, I have other things to do. I can't just sit there and read like a whole PR front to back 100% the whole time. I mean, there's a lot of changes in people's PRs. I have other things to do at work. So I need to be able to quickly skim it and then figure out what's going on. And then now I'm good, right? So I would see that and I would like, oh, okay, cool. They're doing this. That's cool. So it never updates this ever. It gets updated once and never again. And you're like, at that point, it's like, why don't I just take this whole function and then move it out here, right? I can't move it out there. The reason I can't move it out there is because it has to have this thing. And this thing is defined in the component. And I could define it outside of it, but then now you get into a point where this is rendered, they all share the same count. And I don't want that. Also, there's no way to force it to update. So like that's another issue. Oh, I didn't even say anything. So yeah, okay, I took this for granted. This is the state. It gives you an array back, and you can deconstruct values off the array. So the first value is count. The second value is the setter of the count. There's no gets count or anything. It's just the count, because what happens when you call set count, it recalls your function and all this code runs again. And in this case, it will run. So it will create this function and pass it into UseCallback, but it won't call it. And so because it's not calling, it's not executing it. It's like, yeah, okay, it's still kind of using memory to create this function and store it in RAM, but and store the old version of it in RAM, but it doesn't call it this. It doesn't call it again. It just gives you the value that you previously had, because none of these values here changed. So whatever function was already defined here, it'll just give you back that function. And then when you click the button, it keeps calling that function, and it never changes. So if this is a button component, the benefit of doing your callback like this is that you'll never re-render this component. Therefore, this button is also static and won't have to deal with updates. So you pass it one function, and as it gets called, things are happening, but the button is not re-rendering necessarily, unless it also cared about count. Then children would change, but that's not happening here, so we don't have to worry about it. And honestly, a lot of this is like, you don't have to worry about it anyway, because like this speed gain you're going to get from here is minimal. But React is a very death by 1,000 cuts kind of library, in that like once you built out your entire application, then you can't fix it. Once it's done, like, good luck going and rememoizing everything. It takes forever. Just do it from the start. Do everything in the memoize stuff, and then you're good to go. That way you don't have to worry about this stuff. Because like who wants to worry about like, oh crap, you know, I didn't memoize this and I got to go through like 100 functions and fix them, and that's not even guaranteed to fix it now because what is going on here? There, it's not even guaranteed to fix it now because you have other issues to worry about, right? You have you might have new features to work on, or even if you did do that, even if you did like memoize everything, the problem is still have to memoize everything. You can't just like memoize some things and be good. Like everything would have to be memoized, including the components. I mean, it's just do it from the get-go. You don't have to worry about it ever again. And it seems like, okay, well, the performance is minimal. Normal people don't build like little tiny pieces of React. Normal people, when they're working with React, build like entire systems with it. So if you're building an entire system with React, then you're going to have like thousands of these components, and they're going to render all over the place, and they are going to update. And in the past, it was never an issue. And the reason it was never an issue is because people use this function here called connect. They use this connect function. And that would take, I'm pretty sure it actually would do this. And then here it's map state to props. And this is kind of like this is the general use case for connect. And the thing is, connect memoized. So running memo like this actually gives you the same functionality you would have had you used the connect function. Now, the connect function comes with React Redux. So that's where people would have used it if they were using Redux. A lot of people aren't using Redux today. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea, but a lot of people aren't using Redux today. Or if they are using Redux, let me be very clear. If they're using Redux, they're possibly using like hooks with it, right? So you'll have like a my state from, you know, use selector. It's going to be yellow, I thought. I think it's use selector. So it's that use dispatch is yellow. Yeah, but it's not yellow. Which is weird. Why is it red? The dispatch function maybe is yellow? What am I thinking? Dispatch function is yellow. Okay, cool. So they'll either use one of these two hooks, right? And this one will take like a variable, and based on something like this, it would do that. You know, it's like the whole Redux state. So this is how people would normally do Redux today. But not everybody has the latest version of Redux, which is kind of weird, but they don't. I know there's a project at work we don't, and I have to update it. So this is like what you would, this is just going to give you the functionality that most apps had back in like 2015, 2014, back in the day. So that's something to keep in mind when you do this. And then obviously there's this stuff. There also had something called like a pure component. Now nobody writes React like this anymore, but you would have class example 2, let's just say, and extends, instead of component like this, you could extend pure component, and then basically there's no state in here at all. And so then when you memoize around it, you get like the full benefit. But this component has state, so you have to deal with it. There's no like pure component concept for a function component. All functions are pure components essentially, unless you add hooks into them, and then they're not pure components. That's the way you differentiate them versus how you would have done it with a class where you had to extend something completely different. So this is it. I mean, right? But I have like more stuff written. So what if you want to update the document title? So if you want to update the document title anytime the count increases, then you could do a use effect. So now I've got this use effect function. This is like an introduction to hooks, but I didn't even explain this like right off the bat. I don't know, maybe it's a given. So use effect would be like, this is how they show you in the docs. That's what it was. Okay. Okay, so is in the docs. I saw something with use effect, and I was like, hey, this is a bad example. Do they have it? Yeah, see? Here's it. Here it is. This is the one. Oh, this is the one I wanted. All they did was add this use effect. Okay, so let's pull it in. This is the reason I want to do the video. I couldn't remember. I was like, well, once I see it, I'll know. I didn't know. It's because I got the wrong one. So obviously we're going to get rid of these comments. We don't care about these. So this one updates the document anytime the count updates. It actually updates the document anytime the component reloads. Let's be very clear, because it's missing a second argument. So let's add the second argument so that it actually listens to when the count updates. We should update the document title. Not every freaking time any parent component possible would reload this component. Now, right now at this point, that's impossible because of the use memo here. And the fact that this takes no props, this will never update. Once it's rendered once, it will only update when this count updates. And that's the only thing that triggers it to update is this function here. So at this point, now this use effect is already protected, even if you don't pass in the second arg. But we don't know what else is going to happen to this component over time. And honestly, you shouldn't be randomly updating the document title like this. And I thought there's a function way to update the title too. I don't know. I swear there was, though. That's okay. For now, it's like this. But see here, basically, we're saying listen to the count, and you're not really listening. But basically, anytime this component reloads, so anytime something calls example behind the scenes from React, meaning the count updated, but it could be anything. It could be there could be other states. You could add one here. Anytime example gets called again, then go ahead and look through every single thing in this array and find out if any of them have changed. And if any of it have changed, which in this case the count would have changed, then go ahead and run this function here, this function right here. And this function could have like there's like a return, and it's like an unsubscribe essentially. That's fine. We're not gonna worry about it because it's not part of the examples in the docs, so I'm not even gonna talk about it. So it's updating the document title here, and it's passing in this count. So this count could like be out of sync if you don't put it. If you put just an array brackets like this and you did this, it would update the count the one time and never again. And there could be other situations where like you put something here, but then you don't put the count, and so then the count's like never 100% like with the document title. And people can get into weird edge cases like that, and I've seen it. It happens. Good luck fixing it, because how are you supposed to know that oops, somebody didn't pass this thing into the second arg? So I put count here because it is using this function, and it will rerun this callback and reset the document title anytime the count updates, which is exactly the behavior we want. It's not just like I wrote it and I'm making some assumptions. It's like I wrote it and this is exactly what's happening, and anybody that looks at this knows why it's updating when it updates. They're never going to add an array accidentally and then forget to add the count variable. It's not going to happen because it's there already. It's been done correctly from the get-go. So that's that piece. And then when I was explaining this to somebody, I was trying to explain how this whole render process worked. I don't know if that's really for this video, but I could still go through it. So this whole thing behind the scenes is not JSX. It's actually React code. And they've changed it in React 17, but in the old React, it would have been like, they had like create class and stuff. I'm going to call create element, okay? And you could literally just call this. It doesn't have to be React dot, but it would essentially make all these, Babel would do this for you. Babel's set up to like understand JSX, and then React has some hooks into it, which basically convert it into this. So this div here, right here, is actually React create element div, and I think the second arg is null because it has no properties, and then it takes an array of children, or it could just take a single child, whatever. It just takes children, and in this case, let's say like we didn't want that, we just had a div like that. You know, there you go. Bam. I don't even know if you need this null, but it would be something like you would replace that with this. There's your code. But there's more code here. Okay. So because there's more code here, we have to account for the children. So there's an array now of children. So there's a p tag. Yeah. It's not p like this, right? Like that's not how you do a p tag. You do react.createelement again. And this also has children. And it's a p tag, and the children here is text, and it says you clicked count times. Oh, yeah, template string. Okay. So it does that, and somehow it knows what this count is. Because anytime this gets called, it just has count. It's in scope up here. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and so there's your p tag, right? But there's other children here too. Let me close this function. Okay, then we have a button, right? And it's the same thing. This button has a click me, and obviously it doesn't really need to be a template string at this point, but it does have an on click, and I do think it's written like this in an object. So I might not be showing you the exact parameters. I honestly don't know, because I know you can add children here. I could literally do children like this, and it's fine. I've actually never used it with the third arg, but I'm trying to explain it like this is a rough estimation of what's going on behind the scenes, so you understand what this JSX actually means. If you see it and you want to know how it's translated, this is what's happening behind the scenes. And there's even more to it, because it calls these functions, but these functions don't render HTML. These functions make objects, and those objects then get, with react-dom.render, like knows how to take those objects and create HTML out of them, because it could be anything. Just because it looks like HTML here does not mean it's actually going to output HTML. It could like turn your lights on and off and stuff, even though it looks like HTML. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. Or do 3D models, like if you saw my React 3 Fiber video, you would have seen that. So this on-click here is update count. Because it is in scope, we have access to it. And this is not a P, this is a button. And now if it's a button component, I think if it's a button component, you would call the function like this and pass it the onClick here and children, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure because no, you would still pass button here. No, you don't do that with create. Yeah, with create element, you would just pass button here. If it's a button component, this is what you do. Because I use this function. I actually use react.createelement in the return statement sometimes when I need to do something, because I can render, let's say there's a function called like, or there's a prop called like my component, or you could say fallback component, right? Something like this. So I can render this fallback component using create element. Even though it doesn't have a capital F, it doesn't assume it's a DOM element when you do that. It only assumes these strings are DOM elements. And that's only if you use React DOM, obviously. It will assume this is a React component because a function is coming in. So that's how that works. So in this case, it's a string button because it is HTML. Is this all right? I think we're done. Yeah. Looking at my notes here, this is exactly it. So basically, we can get rid of this and have this. And I think this actually will render. I wish I had this set up with Create React app right now. I could just run it real quick and show you. Also, there's another thing. They had this right at the top. You don't need that anymore. Now, obviously, this is going to break, right? So then at that point, we have to import create element. But you don't need React anymore in React 17. It does not no longer doesn't need to be part of the import statement. And if you write your code like this, there's no React anyway. But there's no JSX translation, so there's no reason to have React in scope. But you don't need it in scope anyway. But this is essentially that HTML that we just converted. I think that's all I wanted to show for this video. Hopefully it was helpful to somebody, that you can understand, here's some hooks, here's some basics of hooks, and why the second arg is super important, and how this forces a component reload, and this memoization of components and how that works there, and then all of this return statement. This is what it looks like now after we got rid of our HTML, which looked like that. It's not HTML though, it's obviously JSX, but I'm just trying to make it clear to people. This converts into this. And now it's different. I should be very clear. Also, it is different in React 17. I don't know how it does it. There's something called JSX pragma. Stuff happens. It's magic. I have not looked at the like Babel output of React components anymore. So it's been a while. But this is what it used to be. Something like this. I think, okay, goodbye.